Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Diamond Picks TV, and I'm here with my co-host Idan Velleman. Hi, Idan. How are you doing?
Vincent. I'm good.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, we're going to talk about, of course, what happened this year. We had just a year ago, we were all-time high. Now, after 3 different wonderful events like the Luna, like Celsius and FTX, and of course, after the geo situation, we're at an all-time low. I mean, is it an all-time low? What are the consequences of the latest one of FTX? How big is it in reality? Is that really a drama? And what can we expect for the coming time? So let's discuss that. Because it has been bloody, and everybody's talking about the end of crypto, that all life is going to be horrible, and that crypto has finally shown its face like it really was. And we're going to see what we think of that, because normally when people are talking about that this is the end of crypto, those are good moments, because that's what I always heard. And then normally it's a turnaround, because I mean, if the blood is in the streets and everybody leaves, those are the good moments to talk. But it was a nice, interesting drama, didn't you think? What did you think? What is your take now on Sam Bankman, Idan? What is your feeling about this guy?
Today is going to talk about somewhere. Is going to actually to give a speech today somewhere. So people really are pissed that he's still not in jail and not being arrested. I think what we need to do in the show. I like your intro, and I think what's important is to analyze where are we going from here, and looking at the events that may come as a contagious for the FTX events,
yeah,
and what's happening in the macroeconomic world, and trying to understand where we're going from here, and whether we really reach the bottom, and from here we can start going up, because it's been bloody, or we still have a way to go.
Okay, so let's look at the big situation and zoom in. So this is interesting. This was 2020. And just the Bitcoin at that time was about 6,000, and it went up, bang, in 2021 it went up to how much was it? 64,000 or something like that. Something like
67,000 here to 67,000.
67. We had nice 2 bumps, and then from that moment on it went down, all the way, and we're all completely depressed. But if you look at it where we are now here with 16,000 something, we are at October 2020.
Yeah, so it's almost exactly 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we were more or less at the same level. But 2 years ago, we were in the uptrend, and upwards. Yeah. We started from 6K, and we went up all the way to to all-time high 67. Now we are definitely from November in a downward trend. This hasn't been stopped.
No.
And let's talk a little bit what if we move to the next slide, we can look at what happened. So just to remind everyone, exactly a year ago, the Fed announced for the first time that they're starting to change their monetary policy. They haven't done that, and back then the interest rate was 0. But they said we're going to start increasing rate, and that's exactly where the market starts falling. We could see that less and less liquidity came into the market, and the crypto had a terrible time because of that. And the first Black Swan event was the Luna one. That was in the beginning.
Yeah, but I mean, before the Luna one, so we went from 65,000, we went down to about half. So it first went down 50%. Because I remember on around May 12th. May 12th is my birthday, but also the day that we installed at Diamond Picks. We installed robots as protection on all our coins. All our strategies and all the coins had robots, which basically decide to go in and out. And from that moment on, we went sort of sideways. And then, but with Luna, Luna, Celsius, and FTX, everything went down. So that is really, I remember that date very well.
There's definitely one leg down before Luna, and that is to do with the Fed increasing rates. Then the Luna, there's another leg down, and then a few weeks afterwards, the Celsius stopped withdrawal, and 3AC, which was one of the biggest hedge funds in crypto, and Voyager, which is a big wallet, They all went bankrupt. And then you see from there in June, we are very, very much on sideways. We had a small uptick from July to August, and then the Fed has said that they're going to increase the rates again. And then we had a small, we had another leg down, and then everything looks okay because we feel now that the inflation has reached a peak. And a few weeks ago, we all thought, oh, now with this macroeconomic environment, Bitcoin is going to 30K. And then boom, FTX went bankrupt. And that's another leg down. And that's where we are right now. Right?
Yeah, and it's really, if you look at FTX, I'm sure like you, I've heard so many stories now about that the parents and Sam had 300 million of real estate in the Bahamas, that money moved from one company to the other with a WhatsApp thing, and then you had and if the manager on the other side agreed, he just gave a thumbs up, and all the messages were deleted after a day or two. So there's no notes, there's no minutes, there's no nothing. It's just like, if you put kids in charge who are totally into WhatsApp or Telegram, and then they use those tools to organize a company, and they don't think that minutes are necessary, or they don't think that oversight is necessary, and they just move billions around like it's toy money. That's what we saw with FTX. But let's put things in perspective for 1 second, okay? When this was, of course, geopolitical. So this was, of course, geopolitical. The interest rates, and the interest rates went down up about 10 times during this period. And that is way more than any other moment in history. But then Luna. What is the total amount of damage of Luna? How much was Luna totally worth? Do you remember?
Wow.
It was about 50 billion plus 16 billion, about 65 billion. So this is a 65 billion collapse out of an ecosystem which at that time was maybe 1.5 trillion. Okay, so it was about 3% of the total ecosystem in downward trends. And then we had Celsius, and then basically Celsius went down. I don't know how much. It's not even. This money is gone. Luna is totally gone. But Celsius and Voyager and FreeIC, that money is not gone. These companies are in disarray. They're maybe they may be bankrupt, but there's still money there, right? It's still Celsius.
It's gone, Vincent. It's the hedge fund's gone. They're bankrupt. The money is gone. Voyager, they may be saved by someone, maybe by Binance, but if not, the money, maybe people will get some penny on the cent, but okay. I'm not sure. And Celsius, probably half of the money is gone, and now they're reaching a settlement, and they're actually pretty making some, because I used to have some funds on Celsius, not so much, and I get all the correspondence, and I can see that they're making some progress there as well.
Yeah. How much money are we talking about these three? Was it more or less than Luna?
PSC was 30 milliard hedge funds.
30 billion?
Yeah, and Celsius maybe 10. So there's been some big money, but
so it was the same as Luna. Okay, so it was the same as Luna, but of course the market was already down even more. So probably maybe it was a trillion or something like that, and then 40 billion of that is also 2.5%. Then we had the whole time nothing, and then FTX. And FTX is a huge deal, and everybody's talking about. But I think it's less money than more emotional. That people say, "Well, this was a person we trusted. We thought he was a hero. He was friends with all the politicians. He was. Everybody in the media loved him." And it turns out that they basically weren't able to run the company in a decent way. Now, first. FTX was a total of 8 billion, and half of the money has been lost. I think something like that. There's still a lot of money in there. It will take a while before it gets out. And then there's the other guy. There's the fund they had. But the total amount of money is a lot less than Celsius, Voyager, and FreeIC. But the total amount of publicity and damage to the ecosystem is way higher. But it is really not a huge amount of money. If you, for example, look at when Lehman Brothers went down, do you know how much damage to the economy was down with Lehman Brothers?
Was that 80 million or not?
80 billion? Nah,
Yeah.
no. Go up. Factor of 10 more.
800?
1.1 to 1.15 trillion dollars. So it was, I mean, everything dwarfs everything, all the Black Swans events in the crypto market you can do times 10, and then you are maybe then you get to the Lehman Brothers going down the drain, and then the amount of money that cost was trillions of dollars more. I mean, so it's, don't say that in the normal financial industry those stupid things don't happen. There are stupid things, and there's liars and cheaters. I think Luna was they didn't have enough knowledge. They thought they were invincible. They had a god complex and that kind of stuff, but they were not criminals. I think the same thing here. Celsius, Voyager, and FreeAC. Maybe they're criminals, but most of them, the crash which caused the crash which was caused by all the other things like Luna, but also the Fed, the crash test, they weren't able to survive that. And FTX, what would you say? Is it criminal or stupidity? How would you say?
Both. I think it's both. Look, Sam is not stupid, right? Sam is not stupid. He knew what he was doing. He didn't even have the board of directors. He didn't have a CFO in his company. Yeah. So it was neglected. It was negligence. But at some point when he realized that the shit hit the fans, then he started doing criminal things as well. He admitted a couple of things on Twitter. What he did, that he moved funds from FTX to Alameda Research and back, and all of that. And those are not funds belongs to him, belongs to funds that belong to the customer. So I think there's a lot of criminal activities, allegedly, we don't know, right? So allegedly,
I agree with you. It is first, you say he's very intelligent, and in one part of his brain, he's completely smart. I mean, he made good software. The FTX, the FTX exchange really worked, that you could have all kinds of sophisticated problems. In terms of governance, he was stupid. He was idiotic. He basically, what are you thinking? He didn't have an experience, and he did not listen to anybody. And then, because of the trouble he got into, he did criminal things. But the total, all these Black Swans events, which basically caused crypto to go down, is less than 100 billion, and is less than 3% of the total value of the crypto market 1 year ago. And it's less than 9% of the total crypto market at this moment. And I just say, if you compare it to Lehman, which we also basically had a hard time surviving for the whole market, but there also trillions of dollars were lost as a combination of greed, criminal activity, and stupidity. And but it's not unique to the crypto world, and also I think it's not that they will not survive it. So that's how I look at it, and it's a total stress test for our ecosystem. And good companies will come out of it, and good regulations, self-regulations, and regulations from the different governments, I think will get out of it. I mean, I think what now that suddenly Binance saying, hey, we need to basically prove that we have these reserves and we need to publish that and blah blah, and the whole industry is saying yes, we need to do that, in combination with all the regulators saying we're going to basically demand this, I think is good for the industry, because you cannot trust super smart young people with mathematical skills and software skills to organize a good system where people are being controlled and checked, and where you basically have to be responsible. That is not when you're young, and if you're 30 years old and you have $15 billion in value, you do not become modest, and you do not think that you basically need to report to other people to prove that you're doing something right. I mean, I wouldn't want to have that responsibility, and I'm a lot older. So I think so. This is a nice, interesting perspective. And now the question is to you, Idam. Now that we have this, now that we're at 1/3 of the total value of a year ago, about 80% down, do you think this is the end of crypto? Do you think the trust is totally gone? Do you think that governments will basically totally kill it, and that it will be, in a year from now, it will be totally gone?
So it's not the end of crypto. but it's a big it's a big pain for crypto. It's going to take some time to recover. We lost a lot of trust from the industry and outside the industry. I think that the regulations need to come in place in the US and in Europe, and slowly but surely to get back the trust in the industry. And crypto is all based on networking. And when the networking is strong, and more people are joining the network, whether it's a Bitcoin or Ethereum and another ecosystem, then you'll see parabolic growth of those ecosystem and companies and coins and price. But once you lose the trust, then the network can break down. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin is definitely not broken down, and Ethereum neither, because those were all centralized parties who did things that have nothing to do with crypto, but they created that big crisis. But it's going to take more time, and we need regulation, and we need some responsible people, and we needed to wash out all those guys, the bad guys, and we are doing it as we speak. It may not be the end, and maybe we should talk about that next. What's going to be next? Because on the slide you saw Genesis. I think it's a good way to move to Genesis and talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Well, let's see. I just want to say, how's the market reacting now in the last couple of days? I thought that would be interesting. So we had a nice big breakdown. So what was this? What was this last event?
That was last week. That was the events of the FTX. And you can see that since then, the market is very volatile. It's going up, going down. We went down as to 15,300. Now we're back to 1,600, 500. Everyone's waiting to see if there's more pain along the road. And you see the fear and greed is also a little bit stabilized on the 20. Was last week the same. So not so much change, but there's still extreme fear in the market if you compare it to where we were in November, or where we were even in March. We were on the 50 and the 60s, and now we are reaching the bottom again on 20.
Yeah, and now we're going like we have with Luna, we had the second effects were Celsius. Now everybody's of course wondering, what will FTX cost? What kind of other companies will be influenced by not having any kind of assets guaranteed? And what is the verdict on that? What's the verdict on that?
So let's talk a little bit about Genesis. Genesis is a prime brokerage, and Genesis has stopped withdrawal a week ago after the FTX debacle. And maybe we should talk a little bit about what Genesis is, and we'll let another expert to explain as well what DCG. But if you go back just 1 second, so Genesis is a prime brokerage, and they do three things. So prime brokerage, and they are the biggest in the industry, maybe the only one that's really in the TradFi world, in the normal financial world. Those things are very common. But Genesis is the first one that is catering for the crypto business, and they do two things. So they have assets in custody. They do over-the-counter trading. So every trading.
One second. Custody assets. It means I can basically leave my private keys there and feel good about it.
You not, because you're a retailer, but institutions can do that as well. That's what a prime brokerage do. Genesis did that with Gemini. Gemini, it's another exchange of the Wickelson brothers. And they had the earn program. And if you are an earn program and you can do the staking, Genesis was powering that behind. So that's one of the things they did. Over-the-counter trading is done with big transactions via between one institution to another, or very big parties who want to buy a lot of Bitcoin or a lot of Ethereum. And they were doing that as well. And the other things they did, and that's where they went into problems with 3AC, 3 Arrows, and FTX, is the extend credit. And because of the extended credit to pay, first of all, 3AC, and a few months ago, their mother company needed to give them to write off the bad loan from 3AC and to create a new loan from the mother company, DCG. And that was the first pain, and the second pain is now the FTX, and they have extended credit there, and they lost a lot of money. So in total, we're looking at, they stopped withdrawal and they declared that they are looking at a whole of $1.1 billion that they don't have.
And what is a billion? Is it is it 1 billion or is it like
1.1 billion? 1.1 billion. 1.1 billion. That's the whole they have right now.
But is that so? That is a relatively small amount of money. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm always in Holland. If we say billion, we mean trillion. But I mean, you just mean a billion.
Yeah, a milliard. Yeah, and that's
is that the total amount of exposure they have also in the custody assets? I mean, or is it much more? They probably have a lot more assets there from customers.
That's the whole they have. They have a whole of 1.1 milliard, and that's why they stopped the withdrawal. And if they don't manage to raise that money, they are going to go to bankruptcy.
Oh, they have a whole of 1.1. Okay, good.
A whole of 1.1.
Yeah, let's listen to how other people are explaining about that company. So
yeah. So just before that, Vincent, we're looking at DCG, and that's the mother company of Genesis. And there's a lot of more companies related to DCG, and that's where Coin Bureau can explain it very well. What are we looking at?
Okay. About to get spoiled. The concerns around all this are a big part of why crypto prices are heading south today too. So, for those unfamiliar, DCG is a crypto behemoth. It's invested in a number of companies, and that portfolio includes some of the most well-known names in the industry, including BitGo, Blockstream, Chainalysis, Circle, Coinbase, Coindesk, Dapper Labs, June Analytics, Etherscan, eToro, Fireblocks, and FTX. And that's before we get to G in the alphabet, which is where things get really spicy. More on that in a moment. In short, DCG is a big, big deal. And its CEO, Gary Silbert, is one of the most powerful and elusive people in the industry. Which brings us to those Gs. Now, among its several subsidiaries, DCG counts both Genesis Trading and Grayscale, not exactly small fry themselves. Now, Genesis is a prime broker. That is, a deal that offers custody of crypto assets, over-the-counter or OTC trading, that's the sort of buying and selling of crypto assets not available to us mere mortals, and it also extends credit to its clients for good measure. Think of it as sort of a crypto investment bank. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Genesis, that's most likely because, well, it caters for big institutional clients and not peasants like us.
There you go, bring his class into it again.
Sorry. Now, prime brokers make markets in OTC deals in which the assets being sought are sometimes not listed on exchanges. That means that they'll act as an intermediary in an OTC deal. They make the market. However, sometimes they find themselves in a position where they can't find a counterparty for a trade, but they are still obligated to take the risk of a trade until a counterparty can be found. This is called an odd lot, and it's one of the risks that middlemen like Genesis face. The upside is, of course, that market making and brokerage can be incredibly profitable, especially when you're doing it for rich institutions. If you want a more detailed rundown of what prime brokers like Genesis do, then this tweet thread by Ram Aluwalia is incredibly helpful. Link below. Now, Genesis is also one of the largest lenders and borrowers in the crypto market. And this is where it faces some of its biggest risks, including that of a mismatch in the duration of its assets and or liabilities. For example, as in the tweet thread I just mentioned, there's the example of loaning crypto out to funds for longer terms, i.e. long duration. However, they borrow funds from retail users at shorter duration and redemption through, for example, Gemini Earn. When retail rushes to withdraw from these products, they put the broker in a bind as they need to call back their loans early, which costs money. On top of this, as a prime broker, you have counterparty risk in case any of your institutional borrowers don't repay. Now, one of Genesis's recent counterparties was none other than Three Arrows Capital, which cost Genesis, quote, hundreds of millions. The Genesis CEO at the time, Michael Morrow, resigned as a result of this, and Genesis had to be bailed out by its parent company, DCG. Another good example of how quickly contagion can spread in the crypto market. Since then, of course, the crypto market has gone from bad to worse. There are concerns that Genesis might have had loans out to several CeFi lending platforms whose subsequent failures could mean that Genesis has a lot of loans outstanding that it might now have to recall. Now, Genesis's exposure to FTX is a bit murkier, and Genesis initially claimed it had limited exposure to the now collapsed exchange. In a pattern that is now becoming wearingly familiar, however, that later changed to, when we said no exposure, we did mean that our derivatives business actually has $175 million stuck on FTX, but, it's all good, or something along those lines. This resulted in Daddy DCG having to fork out $140 million to keep the wolf from Genesis's door, an amount that now pales in comparison to the reported $1 billion that the company later claimed it needed to be able to honor client withdrawals.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it may be a bit complex for people.
No, but I mean, no, there's this DCG. It's a huge company with a hell of a lot of companies, but they also said that at one point that FTX was part of it, or did I misunderstand that?
They invested in FTX, so they lost. But there have been many companies like Sequoia and other VCs that invest in FTX. So they lost that investment, but that has nothing to do with liquidity and cash flow. They have a big problem they have a hole of 1.1 million. And there's no one really who's looking to rescue them. And the fear right now in crypto, maybe we go to the next slide so we can look at it. The fear in crypto that they won't be able to bail out, and they go into Chapter 11 again to bankruptcy. And if that will happen, Vincent, then I expect the market to go down. Those are a couple of tweets from the last couple of days. Absolutely zero bits for Genesis and DCG race.
Yeah.
Preparing for bankruptcy. There's another.
This company Genesis needs $1 billion, but the amount of assets they have, where they basically have these, where they store the private keys, that is way much more. I mean, it's really, if the damage to the industry could be much bigger than $1 billion, because $1 billion in all these terrible things where 50 billion this and 40 billion that and 10 billion with FTX. 1 billion doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot more involved in
we'll talk about it in a second. We will touch Grayscale in a second. We'll try to do that. But so there's another tweet saying, so how will in end DCG will be able to raise sufficient funds? They already bailed out Genesis once with 3IC. Who'll take the risk? Who will take the risk? The crypto market is not very attractive right now to big institutional investors, and they may have to go to bankruptcy. So that's where it stands now. There's another tweak to the story, and you just mentioned it. DCG owns Grayscale, and Grayscale is the biggest Bitcoin trust in the world with 360,000 Bitcoins in their assets. Now those assets are safe, and they have a custodial in Coinbase, so that's not a problem. But you could see that the trust share has been down a lot recently and has reached a discount of more than 50%. And they won't be able to collapse, but if they need to release those funds and in order to survive the company, that means that there will be 360,000 Bitcoin in the market soon. And that may mean that it will have a big sales pressure. So I don't know if that will happen. Grayscale is part of DCG. DCG is in problems because of Genesis, 1.1 million hole, and that's where we stand right now. So
okay. And how many of those companies, which I didn't know before, and which are behind the scenes doing business with all the big guys, where we are never invited to? How many others are there? Do you have any idea? Because I mean, I can imagine there's 10 more.
I think those are the biggest. So Barry Silverstein was very early in the crypto space in 2012, and I mean, if you look at his portfolio, it's pretty impressive. He built an empire. The empire may be fall or not, but it's a strong CEO. He knows what he's doing. I personally think that he won't file for Chapter 11. I think he will manage to get to 1.1 million. It's going to be very exciting to see what's going to happen in the coming days. He needs to get that funds in the coming days. Grayscale, I don't think there is any problem there. I mean, I don't see him resolving that. I don't think he will sell it because he earns good money. He earns a lot of millions in commission on this grayscale fund. So there's no reason for him to blow off this trust. But we don't know what we don't know. We've seen that several times in the last couple of months. So let's stay cautious and see what's happened. But there's some good news as well, right? So,
and I mean, I would say, Idan, you're really doing a great job in making me very excited about it. I mean, I always look at, okay, well, just like everything is down 80%. I've been in this situation 10 times. I mean, I read in the Financial Times of today that it's pretty clear that crypto is a scam and it's going away totally. So I go, okay, this is good news. When people who do not know anything about it start saying this kind of stuff, there's two kinds of problems. When people do not have any knowledge of the industry and say, hey, you need to buy it. Like if the hairdresser basically starts talking about it, you're in trouble because we're on top of the world. And whenever all the columnists of the traditional financial industry are saying crypto is a scam and it's going totally away, then I think also this is another big moment, but that's a big moment when we hit the bottom. So that's, is there any positive news in the crypto world or outside the crypto world?
I think there's a couple of things. So first of all, we don't have that slide. If you go back to the next slide, there's actually the macroeconomics, and we saw that so much impact the macroeconomic had on the crypto industry. It all started with the Fed, switching the monetary policy and start increasing rate. It would never happen if we had stayed on a 0% interest rate policy. And it looks like we are reaching
inflation is going down, right? I mean,
inflation is going down.
There's also a pain because the whole building industry is now collapsing in America. It's down 30-40% compared to last quarter. We see that happening all over the world. We see that the normal, it's with employment is still doing very well, and consumers are still spending a little bit of money. But I think that will be the next step. We'll go into a recession, but they actually expect that the recession will be reasonable. Won't be too big. I mean, isn't that what everybody is predicting?
Again, I've heard so many opinions, and the one thing I can tell you, Vincent, no one knows. The only thing we know that the inflation has probably reached a peak. We see that the Fed is realizing that, and it may start lowering the rate hikes, and maybe in Q1 will stop completely. Maybe at some stage it will start to pivot and will start reducing the rates, and that should trigger a bull market to their own risk assets like Bitcoin. So we need to reach the bottom. The FTX contagions need to come down. We need to realize that all the companies are right now safe who managed to survive. There are no other big entity that's going to fall. And once we reach that, and that I think in the coming weeks, it's going to be very clear whether we have another big bankruptcy or not. And after that, we wait for the macroeconomic conditions to be more positive, and we'll start seeing that the crypto market is recovering. That's how I see it. And I think you have a nice one from the besties.
Yeah, I just want to say I have a couple of things. You and I on Saturday. What do we do on Saturday? We go to the sport club and we listen to the besties. And could you explain who these four people are?
Those are four very, very smart and rich venture capitalists. Some of them who co-founded PayPal, and some of them who co-founded Facebook, and that's the level. And some of them who were from the first guys who work in Google, and they are friends of each other, and they are all a little bit on the edge of between 45 and 50s, and they have all in podcast every week. And they talk about politics, they talk about the tech industry, they talk about the economy, they talk about events like FTX, etc.
Yeah,
and
I would recommend I will send the link into this to the notes, and we'll put it in the speaker. But let's listen to a couple of seconds to enjoy them.
Can I tell you a funny story? So I was in, and then when I landed, there was an assistant message on the plane, and then the pilot texted me like, "Hey, bad news. we're not going to be able to take you tomorrow. There's an error message, and if we can't resolve it, we can't fly. I said, okay. So I text Sachs. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm in a really tough spot. Is there any way that I could catch a flight, with you tomorrow? Absolute dead silence. 3 hours later, pilot Paul texts me and says, good news, cleared us. We're going tomorrow. I text Sachs right away. Hey, no worries. It's all resolved. In 8 seconds, he responds, awesome, with an exclamation mark.
Yeah. No, that's the delay. That chart alone, I think, can win the vote.
Okay, let's pull up the chart then. So here is the federal debt, total public debt as a percentage of gross domestic product. As you can see in the 70s and 80s, we were at under 50%. The 90s, we started, growing
I
modestly.
don't think this matters. I think every self-proclaimed intellectual looks at this chart and says, oh my God, we've exceeded 100%. The empire is going to go to ruin. That's not why the empire goes to ruin.
And this is my favorite guy. I mean, he basically came from a very modest background. He from abused parents, and he was very smart. Went to school, became smart, started working at Facebook, invested in them, were invested in Uber and about 100 other companies. He's worth 1.4 billion. And if he talks about the industry, if he talks about what he thinks about crypto, Elon Musk, all the different things in the tech world. They talk about the tech world in general, and they also talk about the crypto world. I really, really, really enjoy them. I can totally recommend them. So I would say to everybody, just read them. But the person who I think is really interesting to talk about the crypto world is Cathie Woods. Cathie Woods. Oops, sorry. Let me see. And Cathie is the most optimistic person on the crypto world forever. And she's doing it in a very systematic way. She's very positive about Tesla, which she thinks will hit, 1,600, the stock price. She thinks that Bitcoin will raise $1 billion, will reach $1 million per Bitcoin. And she has very good ways to back it up. Let's listen to her for a moment.
On to into the security. Look at the blockchains. Let's use the Bitcoin blockchain and Ethereum. What you'll find is they have the infrastructure, the technology has not skipped a beat throughout this entire crisis. In fact, the hash rate, Bitcoin's hash rate is at an all-time high, and that is a real indication of the security of the network. On Ethereum, we're seeing the total value staked at 24 billion. That is an all-time high. So we think the infrastructure is working beautifully. As far as Coinbase, this is an onshore regulated company and wanting to help shape regulations. Brian Armstrong, the CEO, and Alicia, CFO, have been leaning into what's going on right now and saying, okay, regulators, we need more clarity in order to protect investors. Those who wanted to get involved with certain types of crypto were forced offshore, and look at what's happened. So I think that Coinbase is going to come out here looking very, very strong. It just lost a very big competitor in FTX.
Well, what is the market missing, though? Because, that could be one narrative, Cathie, but at the same time, we haven't exactly seen shares of Coinbase rally since FTX has collapsed. Do you think to you that represents potentially broader concern about just people's interest in crypto following FTX's collapse?
No, I think it's more fear. I think many people say, we don't know what we don't know. So what we do is we step back, put a little perspective into the situation here. And what do we have? So the entire crypto asset ecosystem is an $800 billion ecosystem. Apple is 3 times larger in terms of market cap. So that's some perspective. Many people are saying, well, okay, is this another Lehman? Could this be, could we see the domino effect here? I've just given you one reason why. The banking system back in 08, 09, trillions and trillions of dollars, and it was the global banking system. Right now, we have, it seems, from FTX, $5 to $10 billion in creditors as FTX has filed bankruptcy. They will be making claims. If you look at Lehman, that was $1.2 trillion in claims. So again, just trying to put perspective, this is fraud. This is Madoff. Madoff was $64 billion in claims. Again, FTX, 5 to 10 billion. Now, I know that crypto assets are, they attract a lot of attention. This is, the three revolutions we talk about all the time, a new monetary system in terms of the first global, private, not government controlled, digital,
right,
rules-based monetary system. That's Bitcoin, a very big idea. DeFi is a very big idea. And while that has been thrown into question in terms of, shifting from one exchange to another, we've had a lot of shifting around. But I think DeFi, in terms of taking the middlemen out of financial services and making the ecosystem much more transparent with much less counterparty risk, is going to take off. It will continue to move forward, we believe.
Cathie, I think one of the things we're trying to figure out is how long that we think the...
So that is, and she doesn't give a beat. She's still very convinced. She's saying there is, of course, in the crypto world, there's also the normal things which humans do. There's stupidity, there's fraud, and there's one effect on top of the other. But that also happens in the big fiat world, at a scale 1,000 times bigger. And she says the big ideas are still totally intact. And I happen to believe that. I happen to believe that 99% of everything, all the coins in the 99.9% of all the coins in the crypto world are either stupid, are technically not good enough, don't have anything to offer. But out of 25,000 coins which are currently tracked on coin market cap, there's at least 250 coins which are really, really worth it and which will develop further. So that's what I also want to give as a perspective of what.
Totally agree with you, Vincent. Totally agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We said we do it for half an hour. Then I just wanted to say. Just want to take a quick look at how we are doing. With of course we're Diamond Picks. And the best thing is that you can see in our play mode, which you can basically go to the website Diamond Picks, make an account in 2 seconds, and you come in our play mode, and you can see that since November the 1st, when all this last thing happened, if you look, for example, at Hereford, which is our Bitcoin only strategy, we did minus 5.3%, and Bitcoin went down 19%. If we then go back to when did Celsius happen?
In June, the beginning of June.
In June, let's say how we did in June. So in June, it was 46% and 6% we went down. If we look at another strategy, that's the big coins, Duroc, we went 13% down while the market went down 47%. And if we look at my birthday, because my birthday was May the 12th. So let's look at May the 12th and see if we then did.
You're on April.
Okay. I need to look at May Pro. Very good. Then you can see, okay, we went down 12% since everything went to hell and the market went down 55%.
Yeah.
And if we look at Hereford, which is this Bitcoin only, I think that one is really doing well. Yeah, that went down 6%. And we can look at Pennywell, which is the green one. So our strategies went much more, 0 minus 10, while the market went a lot further. So you can play with that, and we can execute these kinds of trades, these kinds of smart strategies inside Binance or Bitfavo, and other ones are to come. Please take a look at it and try us out. We are here to protect you, and we're here to help you grow. That's what we do at Diamond Picks, and the coins and the assets are in your own wallet on your favorite exchange. So that's what we want to say. Okay, that is. Whew, it's not a boring life in the crypto world, Idan, and you have to keep the faith. Sometimes I also worry about, my God, where is this going? And then I need to step back and I need to listen to other people. Even though I went through this 6 times when we started in 2000. Started to do in 2013. We started with it, and Ronald van Woensel told me about Bitcoin in 2011, and I bought my first 100 Bitcoins, for €7 a pop in 2012, and sold them in 2013 for my to buy a Tesla. That was the first stupid mistake I made. But still, I think the reason why this is interesting is a new monetary system, which is international, not dominated by governments. But still, you see, we need some kind of governance, even though we don't need it to be organized by governments, but we need to have some kind of control. So I really wonder how that's going to happen, because I see that people steal and people are stupid, and we need some oversight and we need some good governance of these institutions. So that's what we learned, but we keep the faith. Anything you expect in the next 2 months?
We just monitor. Listen, we can. I don't know. We don't know. No one knows. If anyone can tell you, they don't know. We're monitoring. We hope there's not going to be another bankruptcy, and we're going to get into a calm period, a little bit of sideways, and then start moving upwards. That's what I. Yeah.
Well, I think what we need is, the international situation is really important. We need inflation to go down. We need a recession which is not too heavy. We need the war in the Ukraine coming to some kind of an understanding. We cannot go on, winter after winter after winter. Everybody's building on my house now to make the whole thing energy neutral. And I'm going to use air conditioning instead of central heating. And I'm going to install warm heat pumps. That's a very good thing that we basically accelerate that, but that needs to be solved, and the economy needs to get used to it. And all these big shocks to the crypto systems need to work its way out. Companies need to go bankrupt, be reorganized, and new measurements needs to be implemented in governance. And also there needs to be self-regulations, like proof exchanges that you basically have my assets into account. I want to know that from Binance, and I want to know that from all the experience, and all that craziness of 18%, for staking fees. You and I had a great conversation. You told me about, oh wow, why don't we put all this money into staking? You're always very enthusiastic about new things, and I really go, wow, this is great. But when Luna started to do it at 18%, and Celsius, I think, at 9% or 10%. At a certain point, you go like, okay, there needs to be something which I can understand what people do with this money, except providing liquidity. That thing needs to work itself out. I think this will take until quarter one. Quarter one, we need it for the international economy and also the crypto world to work out. And I think from Q2, we will start seeing some positive signs. And then I hope that the second half of 2023, we will be able to go up in value. We at Binance Diamond Picks are really doing our best to also make money on bad times, because that's also, we need to make money in good times, but we also need to make money. We need to protect you at bad times, but we also need to be able to grow. And I think you're doing a really good job in working on those robots. Okay, so far, when do we see each other again? When is our next Diamond Picks?
In 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks' time. Sounds like a good idea. Okay. I'm starting the end video. I just want to say, it says at the end, please make an account. You need 5,000 minimum. That's gone, right? What is the minimum?
0. 0 is the minimum.
It's become efficient. You can try us out until €200. We basically manage your money for free. And then above it's 2% a year and 15% of the profit. Okay, see you next time.
I think.